Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Toni and I'm a homeschooling mom to 4 kids. This is my daughter, Sienna.
Hi.
She's 12, almost 13. 2 weeks and she turns 13. She loves to read, and so we have been doing this together. So if you guys like hearing about books and book recommendations, especially Christian books and clean books, then give us a thumbs up because we'll make sure we keep doing these videos. And if you're not yet subscribed, make sure you subscribe to my channel. We talk about homeschooling, we talk about mom life, and we do book reviews and what we read this month. And it's been fun. Yeah. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any of this stuff. So first of all, I read 2.5 books this month, and I'll tell you why I only read half of one. And how many did you read?
I read 5.
You read 5. Okay, she always reads more than me because she reads really fast and I do not. And I'm a busy mom, so I don't have as much time. So if you guys want to hear what we read, then stay tuned. Okay, so the first thing that was really fun, if you guys follow me on Instagram, you may have heard about this fun little February thing that I got to do. If you did not, I will fill you in. So our library, I don't know if your libraries have done this before. I've never seen this before. Our library had this fun little activity this month that was called Mystery Date with a Book or something like that. So they had all these books wrapped up and put up on a shelf in our library, and there was like a big prize box. So if you checked one of these books out and you put your name in the drawing, you could win this big box. It had a book and it had treats, and I don't know, it was cool. This was a little scary for me at first because I'm very specific about what I read. I don't like reading books with bad language or with anything questionable. So typically I just read Christian books, or I just really try to make sure they're clean. 99% of what I read are Christian books. So I was a little nervous to pick a book that I didn't know what it was going to be. I'll show you a picture of what I got. This was me after I picked out the book. They gave this list of things, as you can see in the picture, of like kind of the genre, and gave you a little quote about something about the book or the character or what it was about. And it sounded really good. I was like, okay, I think this sounds really interesting. We'll give it a try. So then when I got home, we unwrapped it, which was really fun. So this is the book that I checked out. It's called The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I thought I'd heard of this before. So there is a movie that I had heard of before. So it wasn't actually the book that I'd heard of, but the movie is called The Age of Adeline. It's very similar. I actually watched the movie when I was like halfway into this because I was like, is this the same thing? It's not the same thing. It's actually a different storyline, but it's very similar. So this was really cool to start off. It was very neat. I actually read some of it and I listened to some of it on audiobook. It's about this girl who someone put a spell on her when she was younger, and I think she was in her 20s or something, and her age stopped. She never aged then. So this was like hundreds of years that she's gone through life and has not aged, but there's whoever it was that put a curse on her made it so that the people that she meets, they forget about her. So like if they're standing with her, that's why it's called The Invisible Life. They're standing with her and they meet her and they can have this great conversation, but then as soon as she walks away, they forget about her. So it was a really interesting idea, and I was so frustrated that I had to stop, but I ran into some bad language. It wasn't a ton of bad language. I was actually listening to it on audiobook while I was cleaning, and I had heard a couple things, and I was like, oh, and I understand they were trying to portray a character that was grouchy, and he said some bad words. At that point, I was in the midst of cleaning, had like rubber gloves on, and was cleaning a toilet or something. So I didn't stop the book. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give it a chance, because there had not been anything. And so I kept listening for a while, and I listened to it and kept reading. I had probably gotten close to halfway through, and then there was 1 or 2 more times where there was language, and I was like, all right, I'm not going to keep reading this. So I was really frustrated because it was a really cool storyline. So I was really mad because I was like, it's just unnecessary, and it's not something I would want her to read, and it's just not something I enjoy reading. I don't like reading bad language. So anyway, I was really bummed. I hate it when authors do that. When it's a really good storyline, there's no reason for it. You can still develop a character without having bad words, but whatever. So I did not finish this. It was kind of a bummer. The storyline was really cool, so I will tell you that, but I have committed to not reading books that have bad words, so I stopped. So that was my half book that I read, and I was really discouraged about that. But I did read 2 other books, and I'm gonna have Sienna share one of her books because she read more, so we'll like alternate a little bit. So Sienna is gonna talk about the first book that she read.
Yes. Okay, so the first book I read is The Delusion by Laura Gallier.
So this is a Christian fiction and fantasy.
And this is about a boy named Owen, and he just has a normal life. Then one day, on the news, there's a bunch of suicides happening, and people in his school are committing suicide, and he doesn't know what's going on. But then he starts seeing people in chains and like really looking like they're not doing good.
They physically have chains on them.
Yeah, like they look like demon possessed, basically. And so
are they actually wearing chains, or is this something he's just seeing?
Well, he can see everyone wearing chains. No one else can see it.
Okay.
They think he's crazy, but he like can feel the chains, so he knows that they're real, but he just thinks that there's something wrong with him. And so more people keep dying from suicide, and he thinks that this is a part of why people are committing suicide. He thinks that he's gonna commit suicide, and he's trying not to, but he finds out all these secrets about his dad and why the chains are on people, why they're suffering, I guess. And it was really intense, but like really good. It was definitely a book that I like did not want to put down. It was super good. I loved it.
Did it have anything gory or gross with the deaths?
I mean, they not with the deaths, but they did describe like how the chains were like coming out of their back.
Oh, so it's not wrapped around them.
No,
it's
like there's chains on them, and they're like walking super weird. And so at parts it is like kind of creepy.
But the actual suicide part isn't a lot of description. Okay, because I know that's something that a lot of I wouldn't want you reading if it was really
it's
too much detail.
And it is Christian. They don't talk a whole lot about God in here. He doesn't believe in God. He thinks that God is making all this bad stuff happen, so he doesn't really like God. But at the end of the book, he kind of starts believing a little bit more, starts reading the Bible just a teeny bit. So I think hopefully the next book will be more of him being a Christian, stuff like that.
Is this one where it leads into the next book where you really want to read the next book?
This was big cliffhanger, but since I loved the book so much, I didn't mind it. So, and actually I checked out the book from the library, but it was so good, and I finished my card, which was in your
I talked about that in my video on Monday. If you missed that, I'll link that above. But yeah, so they each have a card and a challenge, and if they read all these books, they get to buy a book from Thrift Books. And
I bought this one, so now I own it, and I'm definitely
and look at this. This looks so nice. How much was this?
This was
it like $4 or something?
$4 or $5.
Yeah. So they have real nice books from there. So that was her choice because she loved this so much.
Yeah. So I'm really excited. I'm definitely gonna read the next 2 in the series.
How many stars would you give that?
5.
5 stars? Okay, so I'm going to talk about the first book that I read start to finish, which was called The Whispers in the Reading Room. I will put a picture here because I don't have the physical book with me. This was so good. Now, I will tell you, this was not a genre that I normally read. If you guys have followed me at any time at all, you probably know that I am a murder mystery type of person. That's pretty much all I read, and unless I'm reading nonfiction or something. But this was so good. This was more, it was a historical fiction book. It had a little bit of murder mystery, but it was more of like a budding romance. For me, I don't really read romance. It's just, I don't know why I like murder better, but I like murder better than romance. But this was so good. I've also never read anything that was, I don't really enjoy historical fiction typically. This was set back in the 1600s maybe. The reading room was like the place, like The Whispers in the Reading Room. So this man was a wealthy businessman, very well known around town, and he would secretly come to the reading room, which was basically like a library, I think, back then. They had books, but they called it a reading room. There was a girl that was typically like maybe how you would picture a librarian. You know, I think she has red hair and she's very maybe plain and sweet and quiet. Anyway, 2 people that would completely be opposites and you would not pick to be together. And so there's this attraction between them, and there's this, I don't know, just the way that the author built up the story to get these characters to get to know each other. And it's in the background, as she's getting to know him, there are these murders that are going around. It took place in Chicago, but there was someone that kept murdering people in like the bad part of town, and he was a business owner. She didn't know what business he owned. He owned a really nice upscale club in a bad part of town, but the club had some questionable things happening, gambling and ladies and different things like that. These two are just, it's a neat story because these two are such opposites and you think they'll never be together. And there's a lot of twists and turns that happen throughout the story. It's a story about class and how certain people marry certain people and certain people don't marry certain people of different levels and things like that. And the goal in life in this time period was for the woman to get married off. So this woman is dealing with her mom always trying to marry her off, and her being with people just because of status and not because of love. It's a really neat story, but I loved it. The murder part was happening in the background. They do solve the murder in the end, but it's not the main part of the story, which for me was kind of surprising that I enjoyed that, but I really did. It was like very kind of like a background, like a second story. It wasn't like the main part. The main part really is the relationship between these two and like secrets that he has and her discovering it. So I loved it. I really loved it. I was very surprised that I loved it that much. I listened to this on audiobook. I loved the voices. Some books I think are just better on audiobook, and I love the voices of the characters because it is from set in that time period where people had like, proper accents and they didn't talk like we do. So I really liked that, where if I had read it myself, I don't think I would have gotten all the accents quite from it. So I really liked the audiobook if you want to listen to the audiobook with this. But I loved it. I would definitely give it a 5-star. I didn't have any issues with it. It was a Christian fiction. It was completely clean. It was kind of like what she was saying. It's not, relationship with God was not like prevalent in the story. It wasn't like upfront where a lot of other books that I read are, but it was completely clean. There was like nothing questionable. Now you hear about some of the stuff that happened in his club. So it's probably not because of some of the content, wasn't anything graphic, nothing bad, but because of like the ladies in his club and what actually happened, I probably wouldn't think it would be appropriate for a young person, but it wasn't actually anything questionable. I hope that makes sense. So it was a great book for mom, definitely. So I loved it. I would give it a 5-star, and I definitely would say listen to the audiobook. I'm sure the book is good too, but I really liked the audiobook. Okay, so another book that Sienna read was
Among the Imposters by Margaret Peterson Haddix. I've read a lot of books by her. They're really good. I don't know if she's a Christian author, but all of her books are clean.
This is like middle grade, not quite YA, right?
She has some middle grade series, and then most of her books are YA.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure this is a middle grade one. This is a big series of hers, the Shadow Children series. It was really good. This is the second book, so I was hoping that it wouldn't matter with me just starting in the second, but I'm pretty sure it starts with different characters in each book in the series. So
it wasn't
I
a big deal
that
you didn't read the first book.
So this is about a boy that it's in a certain time period, and he can't live with his family anymore because he's the like second born, I guess. So he has to go to this school for second-borns. It's called Hendrix School for Boys. Mm-hmm. And so he goes there not knowing anyone, by himself. And he has to like change his name, do like everything proper, and it's really hard for him. He meets a boy, and those two start sneaking off, but they start finding out that the teachers are doing like mysterious stuff, and they're putting cameras like everywhere. They're locking the children in their rooms, and he comes up with all these like funny plans to get through the security cameras and stuff like that. And he has a like tree house hidden place in the woods behind the school that he goes to every night, but he's trying not to get caught. And it was really good. It interested me. It was a pretty short book to read, but it was really fun, and I liked it. Yeah.
So it's kind of an action adventure type of thing? Is it more that than a mystery?
Yeah.
Okay.
And most of her books are actually sci-fi.
Awesome. So what would you rate this?
I would probably rate it a 4 out of 5.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a really short book. It was a quick read.
Yeah.
So good. So the next book that I read, she actually checked out, but she had checked out a bunch of books, and so she hadn't read it, and I saw it and I'm like, I want to read that book, so I took it from her. So this is called Airborne by Diane Mills. Now, I've never read anything from Diane Mills before, but it's a fiction, romance, suspense. So she's a Christian author. It was really good. So the interesting part about this is I don't love living through what we're living through, but I do find it interesting to read about stories that are based on this. This is about a virus that was unleashed on a plane. So it was very similar. These people start having crazy symptoms. They're all on a plane on their way to Germany, and people start having like all these crazy symptoms where they're like bleeding from the nose and bleeding from the mouth and throwing up, and they all have fevers, like fast. Like all of a sudden one person starts getting it, and then it's like within 5 minutes, like half the plane, I think it was like 40% of the plane or something, got this virus. So people are trying to help take care of them. They're on the plane. It was very interesting. The interesting part that I will say about this that kind of perked my curiosity was this was released in 2020, but she'd written it had been working on it for a couple years. So many of the similarities, it's almost like creepy how many similarities happened between this and our life, and what we've dealt with this virus. So it was really interesting, but it follows this FBI agent who was on the plane, and it does talk a lot about she's in a troubled marriage. So because of that, for me, I wouldn't recommend it for young people. For like my daughter, I probably wouldn't tell her to read it, just because her and her husband being separated, and just he's really pretty, there's nothing bad, but he's like mean to her. Like just very blunt, like, I don't want to be with you anymore. And just very, I don't know. It was just, I guess, talking about divorce. I don't love for them to read about divorce. And so a lot of the story is this like troubled relationship with her and her husband, because her husband actually gets suspected of making the virus, because that's what he specializes in. He specializes in making vaccines, so they actually suspect him of planting this, and so that's a big part of the story. They get taken to this island in New York and are quarantined there. I mean, some of this stuff, like if I'd read this before all this happened for us, it would all be very unfamiliar. They talk about the quarantine. They talk about the ladies that aren't there with a spouse are quarantined in like a room together on a bed. They have to wear 2 gloves at night, and they have to wear a mask at all times, even for eating. Like they have to take a bite and then put it back on. It's just weird how, like, we hadn't even heard of masks, really. We knew they wore them in China, but we hadn't like lived that. So it was very interesting how real this is with, what we've had to deal with, except a little more. It was a really neat story. I will say one downside, now part of why I am not giving this a super high rating is maybe because I spread out my reading of it. So like I was reading it, and then sometimes I was listening to it, and then sometimes I was reading it, and I felt like it took forever. I felt like I kept looking like, is this book like super long? 377 pages, which I was like, is that like a long book? Because it felt like it took forever to get to the end. It's really, I looked at my other books that I read, and it's really not that much longer. But I felt like there was a lot in the middle that probably could have been cut out, at least to me. I felt like, I'm like, come on, get to the point and solve this. So that was my only downside. And like I said, that might just be because I didn't like sit down and read it for days and days. And I was trying to finish it at the end. And we did a readathon where we were trying to finish our books. And I was just like, I'm never going to finish this book. It's like taking forever. So it was one of those that I really did like it. And once I finished it, I was like, okay, that was really good. But in the middle, I felt like it was dragging a little bit. So that was kind of a bummer about it. But overall, it was very good. And I loved how short the chapters were. It was like 2 to 3 pages sometimes for the chapters. So that did help it be fast paced. I just feel like there were a chunk of chapters that maybe could have been taken out, in my opinion. But so it was really good. I think I would probably give it like a 3.5 out of 5, only because I felt like it dragged a little bit. But the storyline was really good. So if you like reading about viruses and stuff like that, and you like reading about pandemics and things, this was really interesting. It was a cool storyline. Okay, so we are back. You might notice that we changed our outfits. We filmed this a couple days ago and didn't have time to finish, so this is part 2. So Sienna has 3 more books to share.
Yep.
So let's hear what else she read.
Okay. So one of the books, I don't have the physical book with me right now, but it's called Atlantia by Ali Condi. And it's about a girl named Rio, and she lives in this like under the sea world with her sister. So her mom died, and she has been trying to figure out why she died, because she was really healthy and nothing was really going on. She thinks that her mom was murdered, and but her sister thinks that she was not murdered. So her and her sister are on different pages and aren't really agreeing and stuff. And so she is trying to find out more about how her mom actually died. So there's a couple of people that she thinks might have something to do with it. A couple days later, her sister goes missing. So the rest of the story, she's trying to find out where her sister went. She thinks that her sister went above the sea, which they're not supposed to do because they have the magical power to like breathe underwater and live underwater. So the rest, it was a really good story. It was like, it wasn't a mystery, but it was, I'd say
like an adventure?
a fantasy,
Fantasy? Okay.
and
Are they people that live underwater?
yeah. So
Okay.
they're just
so it's
like,
not like the Little Mermaid where they're like
no,
mermaids living underwater.
It's
Okay.
like just humans, but they
Okay.
have the power to be underwater.
Okay.
So it was a really good story. I really liked it. Yeah.
Cool. So she
And-
spends the rest of the story trying to find her sister or figure out
Yes, and figure out
about the mom's death.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And is not a Christian book. When I picked it up, I just
Okay.
didn't know a lot about it, but it was actually clean and there was nothing really
Good.
bad in it. So that's
Is
good.
was it a YA? Or,
Yeah, it's
okay.
like fantasy YA, I guess.
Okay. So clean. Good.
Yeah.
So what would you rate it?
I'd rate it a 4.5, because I
Okay.
feel like sometimes it was a little slow and there wasn't always something happening, and
Okay.
a couple times it just didn't interest me to pick it up in my free time, but it was really good.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Good. All right. So Atlantia. Cool.
Okay, so the next book I read was Upside Down Magic by Sarah Mlynowski, Lauren Miracle, and
I'm gonna pull
Emily
it up.
Jenkins. And so this book is actually a series. This is the 3rd book in the series. It is basically about a girl named Nori, and her family and a bunch of these people have magic powers. So there's 5 different categories of magic. It's called the 5 Fs, which is the different magics that each person has. There's flyers, flares, fuzzies, and flickers. So they all have different magic. She is a fluxer, so she can turn into different animals, but her magic is upside down. So if she's trying to turn into a cat, she can turn into what she calls Dritten, which is a cat and a kitten. So the whole time she doesn't get into her father's school, which is hard for her because her father is really mean, and she has 2 siblings, and they got into the school.
So
but
her father's like the owner of, or the
he's
headmaster
like,
of this like
the
magic
headmaster,
school?
uh-huh.
Is it a magic school?
Yes.
Okay.
And so she goes to live with her aunt in a different town, and goes to a different magic school that has a class for upside down magic people. And so she's having a hard time with that, but she meets new friends there and is more like interacted with them and has a lot of fun stuff. And her aunt also has magic, and so it's just a fun like series. This is the 3rd book, so it's about this play that they have to do, where each class shows off their different talents. Since they're upside down, their class is upside down, they're thinking if they really want to go up and maybe embarrass themselves or something. And so it was a really good story. Yeah, I read this one like a lot of times, like probably 10 times, but it was really good.
And this
still.
this is like middle grade maybe?
Yeah,
This is
it's-
probably like a middle
yeah.
grade book, because you've read this for years, and this has always been one of her favorites.
Yeah.
And you guys listen to the audiobook and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, me
so
and my sisters like them.
yeah, so it's just a fun series if you like magic. It's just a fun
Yeah.
series. Good. And it's clean, and there's nothing
Yeah.
questionable in it. And if you're okay with magic. So cool. Awesome. So you would rate this what? Because this is a favorite.
Yeah, so probably Probably still a 4.5, just because
Okay.
it's not the genre that I usually read,
Okay.
but it's still really good.
Cool. Okay. Okay, so let's see what the last book that Sienna read was. And this was,
Okay.
you'd picked a couple that were like quick reads just to, at the end of the month,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So this was
Yeah.
one of the ones. And is this a reread? Have you read this before?
Yes, this
Okay.
is a reread.
Okay.
So this is called Stranded by Jeff Probst.
Probst. And he's the guy, if you guys have seen the show Survivor, he's the host on Survivor. You guys know who that is? So anyway, he's written kids' books.
Yeah.
And now you can go on.
Yeah.
Did
So,
you know that he was the Survivor host?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. So this book is about 4 kids. So 2 of them are siblings and the other 2 are siblings. And their parents split, and then one of the parents that were left got together. So they're now 4 siblings.
Okay.
But
Like
they're having
step-siblings.
Yeah.
But 2 are,
But
yeah.
So they're going on vacation. They don't really get along. They don't really like each other, and they're mad that their parents got together. So they're going on vacation with their uncle and without their parents. And their ship it's in a big storm, and something happens to it, so they get stranded on an island. They're trying to find food and water. They do have food from the ship, like granola bars and cans of soup and stuff.
Is it just the kids, or is it the kids and the uncle?
It's just the kids. The uncle,
Did he like die or
I
something?
think the uncle died, or he either got stranded off somewhere.
Okay.
I forget.
Okay.
They still don't really get along well, and so they're just trying to find water. They have enough food and stuff, and they've made fires, but they're trying to find water, and there's different scary animals on the island and stuff. So basically the whole book is just them trying to get off the island and figure out how to get help and stuff, because it's in the middle of the ocean, so they haven't seen any planes or anything yet. But it was really good, so I liked it. It did leave on a cliffhanger.
Oh.
So
okay.
that was kind of annoying, but
So there's
'cause
another
I
book
think-
after this?
yes,
Okay.
there's.
Oh yeah, it
I
says
think it's a trilogy.
Stranded 2, Trial by Fire, and Stranded 3, Survivors. There's the other
Yeah.
books
So if it's a really good book, I don't mind if it's a cliffhanger, but I didn't really
there.
like.
Sometimes it's annoying.
Yeah,
I don't like that either.
yeah. So, but
Okay.
this one was pretty good.
Good.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty easy,
Yeah.
little quick read. You
I read
pretty
it
fast.
in
Like an afternoon
2
or
hours
something.
when
Yeah.
we did our readathon.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what do you rate this?
I'd probably rate it a 3 or 3.5.
Okay. Good. Okay. Cool. Okay. So she read 5.
Yeah.
And I read 2.5. So.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Okay. So that is what we read this month. So we've got a handful of books here that if you guys are looking for recommendations for either yourself or if you're looking for some for your kids, that's why we're going to try to throw in some that maybe she's read before or some younger books in case you're looking for something for your younger kids. Like this one was like ages 8 and up is what it says in the back. So just I don't know, I think it's good to hear from somebody else what books are good for your kids. If you don't have time to read them, I'm going to let her do that. So next month we are going to be doing Middle Grade March, is something that some of these booktubers do, and we thought that would be fun. So I'm not sure if we'll read all middle grade fiction books, but we're gonna read mostly. I might throw in an adult book. Well, we'll see. I might be able to actually read more than 2 books if I'm reading middle grade, hopefully. We'll see. But so make sure you subscribe to my channel if you are not yet subscribed, because then you'll be notified when that video does come out, because I'm excited about that. I think that'll be fun. We already have a couple books that we've picked out, and I think we're both going to reread one that we've read before, right? So we decided to both do a reread of something that we love that we have read before. So make sure you're subscribed. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up, because that is always a big encouragement, isn't it? Yeah. So thanks so much for watching. Let us know in the comments what you've been reading lately. If you have a good recommendation of something that you think one of us should read, please let me know. We love having ideas. If you know any good, clean Christian books or just clean books that you think one of us would love, please give us a recommendation. We'd love that. All right. Well, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.